Get to the news on WHOW.
From regional radio to WinDailyNews.com and the WHOW app. This is local information making a difference.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. Coverage of news is brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Organizations that work hand in hand with youth to better their lives were challenged throughout the COVID pandemic, and some are now starting to return to normal and are on the road to recovery. That would include Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Illinois, and Chief Operating Officer Corey Burrows told regional radio on the WHOW Morning Show Thursday, COVID dropped everything from children enrollment to volunteers and, of course, finances.
So our numbers definitely dropped. There was no doubt that happened. Some matches had to close because of health concerns. Some people had to relocate because of COVID. So we saw some match closures that necessarily would not have been something that would have happened without the COVID impact. Volunteerism dropped, and that's understandable, right? So people, they couldn't volunteer, or they just were fearful to. So we've started to see an increase. So that's great, but the need it's larger than ever.
Yeah.
The mental health impacts on youth during COVID, from the isolation of being isolated from school and peers and friendships and those circles of influence that are important for them, took a significant toll. So we know that there's a larger need now than there was pre-COVID, and we know we need more volunteers now than ever.
Burrows says COVID forced the agency to rethink how they make connections, and like so many other agencies and entities, technology became the answer. Now that many mitigations are being peeled back, he says they're starting to recover.
I think we're starting to recover. You know, I think that we've been able to start doing, we held 4 golf outings last year. We've got 3 on the books for this year. We're starting to raise some funds, getting back out in the community, scheduling some Bowl for Kids Sake events specific to companies. So we're starting to recoup some of that revenue that was lost. Volunteerism is starting to come up. I think that people, for 2 years, people were really limited in what they could do. And I think now they're still they're anxious to get back out and start doing and helping. We need more, obviously. We need more people to step forward and do it. And so that's what we would say here today, is encourage people, like, get off the couch, get out into your communities, and not just us, but all nonprofits who utilize volunteers lost a lot.
BBBS lost a lot in fundraising in the 2 years of COVID. Burrows explains they lost almost a third of their budget that comes from fundraising efforts.
Well, it made us rethink fundraising. You know, special events were obviously impacted in that, large special events were just not possible. So we had to look a lot at how do we increase individual donor donations? How do we start building out a fundraising plan that is more diversified? Because if you rely a lot on special events, which we did, then whenever something like that takes those away, we lost over $400,000 in funding, which is about a third of our budget for 2 years there. So as you can imagine, that significantly impacts programs.
Beyond the funding, the volunteers and enrollment of kids in the program, Burrows says the connections were probably not as impactful as they started to get those back. For matches made during the pandemic, relationships were slower to develop, but Burrows felt already formed relationships were not as impacted.
So I think I can answer that in a couple ways. I think for the newer matches who were maybe made during COVID, it was maybe a little bit tougher to kind of get that relationship kind of going in the beginning. I would say for the matches that had been established for years prior, it didn't impact them at all. And I don't think it impacted COVID impacted the youth, but I don't think the relationship was watered down, because I think they did still rely and count on that mentor that had been with them for 1 to 10 years.
Burrows reminds Big Brothers Big Sisters is a nonprofit that seeks to pair youth that could use a positive adult influence in their life with someone in the community that can be that positive influence. It has been a long-running, successful model that is in place all over the United States.
So Big Brothers Big Sisters is the oldest, largest mentoring organization in the country. We have over 250 agencies nationwide. Here in Central Illinois, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Illinois serves 24 counties, DeWitt County being one of those. Basically, what we do is we try to make sure that children have the supports that they need to be successful.
Mhm.
We talk about defending a child's potential.
Mhm.
And so how we do that is we take caring adult role models from our communities. We match them one-to-one with children who spend consistent time with them. The goal of that is just to make sure that whether they're having issues with academics or peer relationships or adult relationships, et cetera, that these volunteers are able to help give them guidance and support,
Mhm.
make sure that they have what they need to overcome those obstacles,
Mhm.
and make sure that they are successful as they grow older through our program.
Burroughs encourages anyone interested in returning to volunteering or trying out a new opportunity to visit their website, bbbs-cil.org, to find out more about the chapter near you and about what it takes to become a mentor for a young person in your community. Rain, rain, go away has been the theme of May so far, but as we look to June and July, outlooks are trending warmer and a little drier. Ed Shimon at the National Weather Service in Lincoln indicates warm air will set up over the west this summer, and some of that could creep into the Midwest at times.
Well, it looks like actually we should switch over to above normal temperatures in the June, July, August time frame. That whole 3-month summer chunk of time there is showing above normal. Not as strong of a signal as we had previously, though. We're only in the 33rd to about 40th percentile above normal, which is just tipping the balance that way. Real heat out there, though, is going to be Colorado and Nevada area. There's going to well above normal. They're in the 60 to 70th percentile above normal. So there's going to be some real heat just to our west.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, some of that heat is going to oscillate into our area. So we could see some triple digits periodically this summer, as that air is going to shift around, eventually it's not going to just stay there. So once that air gets really hot in the summer, it's going to shift east periodically and give us some pretty hot temperatures, I think, in the July timeframe.
Gotcha.
The trend's going to drop. It's going to, flip the switch as we typically do. We do have lower precipitation as we head towards August, but June, July, August is looking below normal. We're in the 33rd to 40th percentile there in the western half of Illinois, so to speak. So not a, drought everywhere kind of thing, but certainly going to see a drier trend as we head to the mid-summer, mid to late summer. So hopefully the moisture we've got kind of can sustain us as far as it can through the summer.
There was a time earlier this spring when weather officials worried about the possibility of drought in central Illinois, but Shimon says those concerns are going to stay mostly north, and central Illinois is looking to be in good shape.
Yeah, right now we're not really expecting drought conditions to establish across central Illinois based on the outlooks that are the drought outlooks in the U.S. Drought Monitor. Northern Illinois still is, moderate drought just across top rural counties of Illinois. But as far as central Illinois, we're definitely doing really well in terms of soil moisture. I'm looking at the 4, 8, and 20-inch soil moisture depths, and they're in the almost nearly 80 percentile above normal there. So it's doing the really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should sustain us for a good part of the summer. I'm not expecting, central Illinois, based on the outlooks, that we're going to see drought all the way down here. I've seen like really wet Junes, and then all of a sudden by August, middle, late August, you can start to see, abnormally dry conditions causing some surface drought there. So, 30 days is probably as long as it'll hold us without any, more frequent rains. But, if you have a July or an August where you have an inch or less of rain, then that's really going to, put you in a strap, starting some drought conditions in the surface layers.
Shimon says Central Illinois residents are good about reporting rainfall totals via the website cocoraz.org, which is a precipitation reporting website that the National Weather Service utilizes. We'll have more on that this weekend on Regional Radio News. Of course, you heard about some of those rainfall totals that have fallen in the last 24 hours or so on the earlier in the newscast here on Regional Radio as well. It is 19 minutes after the hour here on this Friday morning under cloudy skies, 52 degrees in Clinton. More to get to on the WHOW Morning Show.
Having a hard time finding the correct new car, truck, SUV, or crossover to fit your needs? This is Scott Baum from Bob Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Some lots look low on inventory, so go to our website, look at our pre-order and reserve tab. You'll see inventory in transit, which are built and on their way to Clinton, and in production. new Chevys and Buicks, which are being built and will arrive soon. Or you can always call our sales team. They can help you find the correct one just for you. BombChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
20 minutes after the hour here on this Friday morning. Again, I'm Seth Lawrence with you folks today with this expanded local newscast. It's brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters. And the morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. 11 men and women were honored Thursday during the annual police memorial ceremony in Springfield. Those killed in the line of duty last year include Chicago Police Department Officer Ella French, Officer Tyler Timmons with the Pontoon Beach PD, and Champaign Police Officer Christopher Oberheim. Secretary of State Jesse White spoke at the ceremony.
You are our heroes, and we rely upon you to keep us safe. Without you, perish the thought as to what society would be. And as law enforcement officers, you put your lives on the line each and every day to protect our communities and our population.
Illinois Comptroller Susanna Mendoza, whose brother is a Chicago police detective.
There's nothing any of us, certainly not politicians, can say to make you feel better. I understand that. But to the family members, please know that while your loss is immeasurable, and your anguish may at times seem unbearable, you are not alone.
The names of fallen officers in Illinois are etched on the official memorial on the state capitol lawn. Illinois Invasive Species Awareness Month is a statewide effort held each May to educate and inform citizens of Illinois about the threat of invasive species. An invasive species is described as any species not native to an area that does damage to the environment, economy, the ecology, or human health. There are many common invasives being tracked right now. Sarah Ruth, U of I Extension Coordinator, explains what to do if we encounter an invasive species.
If you do find something invasive, call the extension office and let us know. We're tracking a lot of these different species, so we can be better prepared and keeping things in line. And if you do happen to have an invasive plant species, so bush honeysuckle, the Callaway pear, multiflora rose, any of these invasive species that are creating problems, remove them to help prevent the spread.
Another invasive of the animal variety is the Asian carp. Efforts to eliminate the fish from the Illinois waterways has been unsuccessful, so experts have, in many cases, moved on to a strategy to manage them. A report is out on a COVID outbreak at a state veterans home in November 2020. The LaSalle Veterans Home had 36 residents die from COVID at the height of an outbreak. The report from the Auditor General says the Illinois Department of Public Health was slow to react to the spread of the virus inside the home, not showing up until 11 days after the outbreak began. Governor J.B. Pritzker says when the outbreak was at its worst, everything was going against keeping residents safe.
At a time when all agencies were stressed, at a time when the disease itself was widespread and rampant. One, people in the area weren't following mitigations. People were being infected and bringing it into the home, and that was an enormous challenge. And then on top of that, there were some management faults that occurred. And as you know, I did hold people accountable, and I did fire people who were in those positions.
The report notes the IDPH health region the veterans home is located in saw positive cases jump from October to November of 2020 by 212%. Horace Mann Educators Corporation Thursday reported first quarter net incomes of $14.5 million. The Springfield-based company says it had net incomes of 35 cents per share. Earnings adjusted for investment costs came to 64 cents per share. The provider of auto and homeowners insurance for teachers and other educators posted revenue of $346.8 million in the period. Horace Mann expects full-year earnings in the range of $3.45 to $3.65 per share. Consolidated Communications Holding Incorporated Thursday reported a loss of $115.7 million in its first quarter. The Mattoon-based company says it had a loss of $1.12 per share. Earnings adjusted for one-time gains and costs came to 2 cents per share. The telecommunications company posted a revenue of $300.3 million in the period. Representatives of ag groups recently told a federal board of some of the issues they face due to freight rail delays and disruptions. Rod Bain has this report.
How significant is the issue of freight rail delays and its contribution to both bottlenecks in ag commodity and input transportation and supply chain disruptions? Perhaps the chair of the National Surface Transportation Board, Martin Oberman, explained it best.
There has not been a Secretary of Transportation address the STB in over 20 years.
Yet that is precisely what Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg did before a recent STB hearing on the matter of urgent issues in the freight rail industry.
It's been a real problem for the people and industries across the country who rely on rail to move their goods, particularly farmers, many of whom have no other adequate way to access feed and fertilizer or to get their goods to market.
And a cross-section of ag stakeholders was represented in their testimony to the Surface Transportation Board. Michael Seifert of the National Grain and Feed Association says the relationship of grain and rail remains important, yet current challenges have led to a call to resolve these issues.
Some members have experienced doubled trip times, such as trips from the Midwest to the West Coast taking 20 days when they used to take 10 days. One of the primary reasons for the additional trip time is excessive dwell time at origin. We have reports of trains sitting for more than 10 days when it is customary to have the trains pulled the following day after loading.
Andrew Walmsley of the American Farm Bureau Federation offered examples of how delays in freight rail movement of ag goods affect other aspects of the supply chain.
Flour and feed mills waiting on deliveries of grain that never arrived could be forced to temporarily cease operating and cut off sales to customers until deliveries return. This is extremely important when it comes to livestock operations that are reliant on feed shipped from these mills. They may be forced to ration or stop feeding until deliveries return, or find alternative feeding options that are typically very costly, stunning the production cycle and putting the health and well-being of our livestock at risk.
Justin Luckheim of the Fertilizer Institute, as with planting season underway and input availability further disrupted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the need for rail transport of fertilizer to customers becomes more crucial.
The timeliness and reliability of fertilizer shipments is important year-round, but it is crucial during the spring season because farmers need it to apply in a very narrow 3 to 5 week window. Once the window closes, it remains closed until the next season, and if farmers do not receive fertilizer, it results in lower crop yield, higher food prices, and more inflation.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
It is 28 minutes after the hour here on this Friday morning. Coverage of news is brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton.